7 years of invisible work has a way of teaching you what silence sounds like when it turns against you. I built the system from scratch. Every algorithm, every encryption layer, every backup protocol that kept Thorn Technologies from collapsing under its own ambition. Alaric got the Forbes features. Hugo got the corner office. I got Tuesday morning meetings where people nodded politely while checking their phones. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd designed the AI platform to recognize patterns in user behavior, to predict departures before they became obvious. Turns out, I should have run the diagnostic on my own life. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. 3 months ago, I stopped getting calendar invites. Not all of them, that would have been obvious, just the ones that mattered. Strategy sessions became quick syncs I'd hear about afterward. Budget approvals started arriving as done deals. My input transformed from necessary to courtesy, then from courtesy to optional. Tessa noticed I was noticing. She's good at that, reading rooms, adjusting her approach. 7 years of marriage had made her fluent in my particular brand of observation. We'd built something efficient together, both in business and at home. Her boutique catered to the same tech money that funded her father's company. We understood leverage. "You're being paranoid," she said one evening, arranging imported succulents on our dining table. Everything in our home looked deliberate, chosen, including apparently the timing of this conversation. "Alaric's trying to develop the next generation of leadership. You know how he is about legacy." I did know. Alaric Thorn had spent 30 years building his reputation as a visionary, which mostly meant hiring people who did the actual work while he explained it to journalists. He had a gift for making complex systems sound inevitable, like he'd simply noticed them lying around and decided to make them profitable. The company Christmas party last week had been instructive. Hugo, 28, MIT credentials, impeccable timing, had presented my quarterly infrastructure report. Same data, same analysis, different voice. He'd added nothing except youth and a better haircut. The board applauded. Alaric beamed. Someone mentioned succession planning. I'd smiled, raised my glass, congratulated Hugo on his fresh perspective. That's what you do when you're the senior architect at a mid-sized tech firm founded by your father-in-law. You perform gratitude. But I stopped sleeping well after that. Not from anger. Anger's too expensive, too visible. I just started paying closer attention to what people weren't saying. To the meetings that shifted times without explanation, to the server logs that showed access from terminals I hadn't authorized. This morning, I'd arrived at the office at 6:30. The building was empty except for security, which was the point. I needed to check something that had been bothering me since last Tuesday's board meeting. Nothing dramatic, just a small inconsistency in the project timeline Alaric had presented. A date that didn't align with our development schedule. A milestone attributed to Hugo that hadn't existed 3 weeks ago. I bypassed the main server room and headed for Alaric's private office. He kept hard copies of everything important. Didn't trust the cloud despite making his fortune from it. Old habits from his days running defense contracts, before he pivoted to civilian AI. The door was unlocked. Another habit, another oversight. He liked being the first one in, the last one out. Liked the performance of dedication. His desk was organized with military precision. Contracts on the left, proposals on the right, active projects in the center. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just confirmation. I found it in a folder marked Personnel Confidential. Hugo's resume, which I'd seen during his hiring process 6 months ago. Nothing unusual there. But underneath it, clipped to an internal memo, was a handwritten note on Tessa's personal stationery. The expensive kind, cream-colored with her boutique's logo embossed at the top. He's perfect for the role, and for me. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand, the sentence was remarkably clear, but because I needed to see if the meaning changed with repetition. It didn't. The memo was dated 8 weeks ago, before Hugo's promotion, before my meeting invitations started disappearing, before Tessa suggested I was being paranoid. I photographed the page with my phone, replaced everything exactly as I'd found it, and left the building. Stopped at a coffee shop I'd never been to before. Ordered something complicated I didn't want. Sat by the window and watched people start their mornings. Commuters checking phones, parents managing children, everyone performing their designated roles. The efficient thing would have been confrontation. Ask Tessa directly, force clarity, make decisions based on truth. But efficiency assumes everyone's operating from the same playbook, using the same definitions. I'd built my career on understanding systems, and what I just confirmed wasn't a bug. It was a feature. They hadn't made a mistake. They'd made a plan. I pulled up my phone and opened the documentation I'd written over 7 years. Every technical specification, every architecture decision, every integration point that made Thorn Technologies actually work. The system had my name in the metadata, time-stamped, version-controlled. But the intellectual property assignment I'd signed when I joined, back when Alaric was still calling me son and talking about family legacy, that was airtight. Everything I built belonged to the company, except I'd been careful about certain things. The encryption protocols used custom keys I'd generated personally. The core algorithms referenced libraries I'd written independently before my employment contract. The backup systems ran through authentication layers that technically weren't part of the company's infrastructure. Everything worked seamlessly because I'd designed it to, but the pieces were separable, theoretically. I spent the rest of the day testing that theory. Nothing dramatic, just quiet verification, checking access logs, confirming dependencies, making sure I understood exactly what connected to what, and which threads, if pulled gently enough, would make the whole system tense without breaking. By evening, I had answers, better ones than I'd expected. Tessa came home late, which had become normal. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day in the tone people use when they don't want detailed answers. I said it was fine, asked about the boutique. She talked about a new supplier, some problem with inventory management. I listened, watched her move through our kitchen, efficient and focused. Alaric wants to have dinner this weekend, she said, opening wine. He mentioned wanting to discuss your role, something about restructuring. Sounds important. He values your input. She handed me a glass. He's just trying to position the company for the next phase. You understand that, right? I understood perfectly. That night, after Tessa went to sleep, I sat in my home office and mapped out exactly how the system worked. Not the official documentation, that was public, accessible, useless without context. I mapped the invisible architecture, the assumptions everyone made, the single points of failure disguised as redundancies. I'd built something elegant, alarmed by that fact. Because elegant systems are fragile systems. They depend on everything working exactly right, every component in harmony. Remove one piece carefully enough, and nothing breaks immediately. It just stops working, slowly, inevitably. The invitation arrived 3 days later, embossed cardstock delivered by courier. Thorn Technologies product launch. Media presence confirmed. Board members attending. Special recognition for the development team. Hugo's name appeared twice in the program. Mine appeared once, in small text, under supporting staff. I RSVP'd immediately. Wouldn't miss it. Tessa found the invitation on our counter that evening. "This will be good for you," she said, reading through the program. "Alaric's being generous with recognition. You should wear the navy suit." I was thinking the charcoal. Navy photographs better. I nodded. Let her think she'd won that one. The next 2 weeks, I worked like I'd always worked. Showed up early, stayed late, answered questions, fixed problems. But I also did something else. Something careful. I began separating my architecture from theirs. Not obviously, not all at once, just small changes. A permission reassignment here, a key rotation there, authentication updates that everyone approved without reading. System stability remained perfect. That was crucial. If anything had faltered, someone would have investigated. But everything ran smoothly, better than smoothly. I'd spent 7 years learning exactly how to make complicated things look simple. Hugo stopped by my office twice that week, both times to ask technical questions he should have understood if he'd actually built what he was claiming credit for. I answered both times, walked him through the solutions patiently, let him take notes. The second time, he lingered in my doorway. "You know, Bennett, you've built something really impressive here. The company appreciates everything you've contributed." Contributed? Past tense. Interesting choice. "Just doing the work," I said. He smiled, that confident smile that comes from never having to doubt whether you deserve what you've been given. "Well, keep it up. We're all counting on you." After he left, I sat at my desk and felt something shift. Not anger, not even betrayal, really. Just clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending you don't see the pattern. They'd taken my work. Fine. That was business. They'd planned my replacement. Also fine. That was strategy. But they'd done it while letting me keep building, keep improving, keep investing in something I'd already lost ownership of. That was personal. And personal meant they'd made assumptions about me, about what I'd accept, about who I was. I pulled up the system architecture on my screen. 7 years of invisible infrastructure. All of it running perfectly. All of it dependent on components they didn't fully understand. The launch was in 6 days. I started making a list. The announcement came during Monday's all-hands meeting, delivered with Alaric's trademark blend of warmth and inevitability. Effective immediately, we're restructuring our technical leadership to better reflect our growth trajectory. He stood at the front of the conference room, backlit by the company logo, every inch the visionary founder. Bennett Sterling will be transitioning from lead architect to senior technical advisor, allowing him to focus on high-level strategy while we develop our next generation of leadership. Applause. Supportive nods. Hugo sat 3 seats down from me, projecting appropriate humility. Hugo Castellan will be assuming the role of Chief Technology Officer, reporting directly to me. His innovative approach to our platform architecture has been instrumental in our recent advances. My platform architecture, my 7 years of late nights and systematic problem solving, repackaged as Hugo's innovation. I watched him stand, shake hands, accept congratulations. He'd practiced this moment. You could tell by how natural he tried to make it look. Tessa caught my eye from across the room. She smiled, a small, controlled gesture that could have meant anything. Support, perhaps? Or confirmation that I was expected to perform gratitude now, in front of witnesses. I did. Stood, shook Hugo's hand, said something appropriate about confidence in new leadership. The words came easily. I'd been practicing too, just different material. After the meeting, people avoided my desk. Not obviously, everyone had pressing work, urgent calls, meetings they'd forgotten about. But the pattern was clear. Demotion carries a particular kind of contagion. Nobody wants to catch it. I spent the afternoon reviewing access logs. As senior technical advisor, a title that sounded important while meaning nothing, I still had system privileges. For now. They'd revoke them eventually, once Hugo figured out how to manage the infrastructure, which, given his current trajectory, might take a while. The logs told an interesting story. Hugo had been accessing core systems for 3 weeks, always during business hours, always from his office terminal. He'd viewed documentation, examined code, exported architecture diagrams, everything a new CTO should do when preparing to lead technical operations. Except he'd never accessed the encryption documentation, never pulled the authentication protocols, never reviewed the backup configurations that kept everything actually running. He'd studied the visible infrastructure, the parts that appeared in presentations and board reports, but ignored the invisible scaffolding, the parts that mattered. I pulled up the source code repository and checked recent commits. Hugo had made 47 changes in 3 weeks, all of them minor. Configuration updates, comment additions, style improvements, nothing substantive, nothing that demonstrated understanding of how the system actually worked, but each commit carried his name, his timestamp, his growing claim to authorship. I opened a new terminal window and began documenting the encryption architecture. Not the simplified version we kept in official documentation, the real one. Every key, every protocol, every authentication layer I'd built independently before my employment contract specified intellectual property rights. I wrote it out methodically, timestamped each section, and saved it to a secure location outside company servers. Then I ran a diagnostic, the kind I'd run monthly for 7 years, checking system health, verifying backup integrity, ensuring nothing was degrading. Everything came back clean. Perfect stability, optimal performance, 0 errors. I made one small change. A permission adjustment on a tertiary authentication layer. Nothing that would cause immediate problems. Nothing anyone would notice unless they were specifically looking. The system continued running flawlessly. That evening, Tessa worked late again. I ordered takeout, ate alone at our dining table, and thought about infrastructure dependencies. How systems that look robust can be surprisingly fragile. How removing the right component doesn't cause immediate collapse. It just creates conditions for eventual failure. My phone buzzed. Text from Alaric. Dinner Friday? Want to discuss transition planning? I replied immediately. Sounds good. Looking forward to it. 3 days before the launch. Perfect timing. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the office to find my desk had been moved. Not far, just from the corner office I'd occupied for 4 years to a smaller space near the break room. Better for collaboration, the facilities manager explained. Easier access for people who needed senior-level guidance. The new CTO's office, my former office, now displayed Hugo's name on the door. He'd already moved in, reorganized the space, hung his MIT diploma prominently, erasing evidence of prior occupancy. I spent Tuesday setting up my new desk, which mostly meant configuring secure access to systems I needed. The company's network security was good. I'd designed it, but it wasn't designed to keep me out. I knew every backdoor, every maintenance protocol, every legitimate reason to access restricted areas. I also knew exactly which components were documented and which existed only in my memory. The difference between what Hugo thought he controlled and what he actually controlled. Wednesday, I received my first assignment as senior technical advisor. Review Hugo's proposed architecture improvements. He wanted to upgrade our processing infrastructure, improve efficiency by 17%, reduce operational costs. The proposal was professionally formatted, heavy on business jargon, light on technical specifics. I read through it carefully. He was proposing changes to systems he didn't understand, optimizations that would break dependencies he hadn't identified. Everything looked plausible on paper. In practice, it would destabilize the entire platform within weeks. I could have corrected him, pointed out the errors, explained the dependencies, prevented the disaster. That would have been the professional thing to do, the generous thing. Instead, I wrote a positive review, praised his innovative thinking, suggested minor clarifications that made the proposal sound more authoritative while changing nothing substantive. Submitted it to Alaric with my full endorsement. They'd asked for my expertise. I was providing it. Thursday afternoon, I conducted my monthly backup verification. Standard procedure, checking that our recovery systems worked, that data redundancy was intact, that we could restore operations after a hypothetical failure. Everything checked out perfectly, as it had for 7 years. Except this time, I made additional copies. Personal copies. Documentation of every system I'd built, every protocol I'd designed, every component that carried my architectural fingerprint. I saved them to encrypted storage that had nothing to do with Thorn Technologies. Insurance, in case anyone decided senior technical advisors didn't need access to historical records. I also ran a different kind of verification, testing which systems would continue functioning if certain authentication keys were revoked, which processes depended on protocols that technically belonged to me, not the company, which components would recognize my credentials even if company access was terminated. The results were illuminating. The system would keep running. I'd built it too well for immediate collapse. But without my keys, certain maintenance functions would fail. Backup systems wouldn't complete. Security updates wouldn't authenticate. Nothing critical at first. Just small degradations. The kind you don't notice until they accumulate. Hugo stopped by my new desk Thursday evening. "Hey Bennett, quick question about the encryption protocols. I was looking through the documentation and some of the key generation procedures seem..." He paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. "Underdocumented." "Which procedures specifically?" "The ones for the primary authentication layer. The documentation references external libraries, but I can't find the source." "Because the source was my personal codebase, written before I joined the company, licensed independently. A fact that was technically documented in my original employment contract, in the appendix nobody read, under intellectual property exclusions." "Those libraries are in the repository," I said. "Under vendor dependencies." "I checked there. They're referenced, but not included." "Right. They're maintained separately. Standard practice for external dependencies." He frowned. "So if something breaks, how do we fix it?" "Contact the maintainer." "Who's the maintainer?" I looked at him. Let the silence extend. Watched him process implications. "The documentation should have contact information," I said finally. "Check the README." The README listed my personal email, the one that had nothing to do with Thorn Technologies, the one that would continue existing after my company access ended. Hugo nodded slowly. "Got it. Thanks." After he left, I verified something I'd suspected. He'd scheduled a meeting with Alaric for Friday morning, 2 hours before our dinner. The calendar invitation didn't include me, but it mentioned technical transition planning. They were preparing to complete my removal, making sure Hugo could operate independently before they finalized my irrelevance. I worked late Thursday night, alone in the office, not because I needed to, my preparation was complete, but because I wanted one final look at what I'd built. 7 years of architecture, elegant and efficient, running exactly as designed. I'd created something beautiful, a system that anticipated problems, prevented failures, maintained itself with minimal intervention. It was the kind of work that should have made someone indispensable. They'd made me disposable anyway. I pulled up the server room access logs one more time, cross-referenced them with badge records, verified physical access patterns against digital activity. Everything aligned perfectly. Nobody had entered unauthorized areas. Nobody had tampered with hardware. The system was secure, stable, pristine. I put on my jacket and headed for the server room. Used my badge, still active, still authorized. The security system logged my entry with timestamp and purpose. Routine maintenance verification. Inside, surrounded by humming hardware and blinking indicators, I conducted my verification. Checked connections, examined configurations, documented current state. Everything was exactly as it should be. Then I did something that would look in the logs like standard maintenance. Key rotation, a routine security procedure I performed quarterly, updating authentication credentials, generating new encryption keys, cycling access tokens. All of it documented, all of it justified, all of it completely normal. Except this time, the new keys went to destinations the company didn't control. Backup authentication systems that would recognize my credentials, but not Hugo's. Encryption protocols that would continue working perfectly. Until they needed maintenance only I could provide. I didn't break anything. That was important. The system continued operating flawlessly. Every metric remained green. Every process completed successfully. Nothing changed from the user perspective. I just ensured certain things would require my attention eventually. That the invisible infrastructure would stay invisible until it needed maintenance. That whoever claimed ownership would discover ownership required understanding. I finished at midnight, logged the maintenance completion, locked the server room, badged out through security. Friday morning, I dressed carefully. Navy suit. Tessa had been right about that. Conservative tie, the appearance of someone grateful for new opportunities, not someone who'd spent the week preparing for controlled demolition. The launch invitation sat on my desk at home, embossed and formal. 24 hours away. I'd received my assignment. Attend, support Hugo's presentation, represent senior leadership's commitment to innovation. I planned to do exactly that. My phone buzzed. Text from Alaric. See you tonight at 7. Marcel's downtown. Looking forward to the conversation. I replied. Wouldn't miss it. And I meant it. The restaurant Alaric chose was predictably expensive, the kind of place where servers memorize your preferences and lighting designers earn consulting fees. He was already seated when I arrived, occupying a corner table that offered privacy and visual command of the room. Strategic placement. Everything with Alaric was strategic. Bennett. He stood, extended his hand. The grip was firm, practiced. Thank you for making time. Of course. We ordered. He selected wine I wouldn't have chosen but didn't object to. We discussed the weather, the upcoming launch, trivial observations that filled space while servers delivered appetizers. The conversation had choreography, opening pleasantries, transition to business, delivery of predetermined conclusions. I want to talk about your future with the company, he said finally after the second course arrived. Your transition has been handled poorly. I take responsibility for that. An interesting opening, acknowledging fault while claiming control of the narrative. The timing was abrupt, I agreed. Hugo's promotion became necessary faster than anticipated. Board pressure, investor expectations, you know how these things accelerate. He paused, sipped wine. But that doesn't diminish what you've built. Your contributions have been foundational. Foundational? Past tense again. They were all using it now. I appreciate that. The senior advisor role is a transition position. I want to be transparent about that. He leaned forward slightly. We're moving in directions that require different expertise. Hugo brings fresh perspective, new methodologies. The company needs that right now. I understand. Do you? He studied me. Because I want to make sure we're aligned. Your work has been excellent, Bennett. But the platform is maturing. We need innovation now, not maintenance. I'd spent 7 years building systems that anticipated problems before they occurred, that scaled elegantly, that required minimal maintenance because they were designed properly. Apparently that was the problem. I'd made myself look unnecessary by being too competent. What are you proposing? A generous severance package, 6 months' salary, extended healthcare, positive references. We announce it as a mutual decision. You're pursuing new opportunities. We're grateful for your service. Everyone maintains professional relationships. When? After the launch. We make the announcement Monday. Clean break, no complications. I nodded slowly, as if considering options I didn't have. And Hugo takes full ownership of the platform. He already has ownership. We're just formalizing the transition. What about intellectual property concerns? Documentation handoff? Alaric waved dismissively. Hugo's been reviewing everything. He's confident he can manage the technical operations. And frankly, the architecture is well documented enough that any competent engineer could maintain it. Any competent engineer? That was almost funny. I'd like some time to consider the offer, I said. Of course. Take the weekend. We can finalize details Monday. He signaled for the check. I'm glad we could have this conversation, Bennett. These transitions are never easy, but I think we're handling it professionally. We were handling it exactly as he'd planned. The only question was whether he'd realize that before tomorrow night. I drove home thinking about architecture, not just software architecture, the broader concept, how structures appear solid until you understand their dependencies, how removing the right support doesn't cause immediate collapse, just inevitable failure. Tessa was in the living room when I arrived, laptop open, reviewing inventory reports for her boutique. She looked up when I entered. How was dinner? Productive. Alaric offered severance terms. She closed the laptop carefully. I see. Did you know he was planning this tonight? He mentioned wanting to discuss your transition. I didn't know specifics, but you knew there would be an exit offer. She stood, walked to the window. Our apartment overlooked the city, expensive view, expensive silence. Bennett, you have to understand the position everyone's in. The company needs to evolve. That's not personal. What about us? Is that personal? What are you asking? I found your note in Alaric's office about Hugo. She turned. For the first time in months, I saw actual calculation in her expression. Not surprise. She'd already considered this scenario, already prepared responses. That note was taken out of context. He's perfect for the role, and for me. How should I contextualize that? Hugo brings connections we need. His network, his background, those relationships matter for the business. That's what I meant. That's remarkably convenient interpretation? You're being paranoid again. I'm being observant. There's a difference. She sat back down, composed herself. When she spoke again, her voice carried the professional distance she used with difficult clients. Whatever you think is happening, you need to accept reality. The company is moving forward. You can either accept Alaric's offer gracefully or make this complicated for everyone. Including yourself. Including everyone. Yes. I looked at my wife. 7 years of efficient partnership, mutual benefit, strategic alignment. I'd thought we'd built something durable. Turns out we'd just built something convenient. I'll accept the offer, I said. Monday morning, as discussed. Relief flickered across her face. She'd expected resistance, drama, emotional leverage. I was providing none of it. That's mature of you. I try to be practical. I went to my home office and closed the door, pulled up my laptop and reviewed the preparation I'd completed over the past week. Everything was positioned correctly. Keys rotated, documentation secured, dependencies verified. The system would run perfectly through tomorrow night's launch. After that, it would require maintenance only I could provide. I'd built something elegant. They were about to learn exactly how elegant. Saturday morning, I received the formal launch schedule. The event would begin at 7, cocktails and networking for the first hour, presentation at 8 with Hugo demonstrating the platform's capabilities, board members and major investors attending, tech media covering, Alaric giving opening and closing remarks. My name appeared once, in small text. Special recognition for technical contributors. I spent Saturday reviewing my wardrobe. Tessa was right. Navy photographed better. I selected a tie that would read well on camera. Polished shoes that suggested professional competence. The appearance of someone grateful for recognition, not someone who'd weaponized 7 years of infrastructure. Sunday, I did nothing. Read. Walked through the city. Avoided thinking about revenge or justice or any dramatic framework. This wasn't about emotion, it was about corrections. Restoring accurate attribution to complex systems. Monday morning, Tessa left early for her boutique. Wished me luck at the launch. Kissed my cheek with the warmth of someone completing social obligations. I watched her leave and felt nothing except mild curiosity about timing. I arrived at the venue early, not suspiciously early, just appropriately early. The kind of early that suggests investment in the event's success. Staff were setting up presentation equipment, testing displays, arranging seating. Everything coordinated, professional, expensive. Hugo was already there, reviewing his presentation notes. He dressed well, better than usual. Someone had coached him on executive presence. Probably Tessa. She was good at that kind of refinement. Bennett. He approached with practiced collegiality. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. I wanted to say, your work on the platform has been invaluable. Tonight's success belongs to the whole team. Absolutely. I know transitions are difficult, but I hope you'll see this as positive evolution for everyone. I'm sure it will be educational. Guests began arriving around 6:30. Board members, investors, journalists. Alaric worked the room with his characteristic charm, making introductions, managing conversations. He saw me, nodded approval at my attendance, returned to more important networking. Tessa arrived at 7, stunning in something that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She found Hugo immediately, touched his arm, laughed at something he said. They looked natural together, matched, appropriate, the kind of couple that photographs well. I took a glass of wine I didn't intend to drink and positioned myself near the back of the room. Good sightlines, easy exit access. Not hiding, just observing. At 8, Alaric took the stage. The room quieted with practiced efficiency. Thank you all for joining us tonight. What you're about to see represents 5 years of innovation, investment, and vision. Our platform is changing how enterprise AI systems handle complex operations, and I'm proud to introduce the leader who's made this possible, our new Chief Technology Officer, Hugo Castellan. Applause. Hugo walked to the stage, confident and prepared. He began his presentation exactly as rehearsed. Discussed architecture, efficiency improvements, scalability features, used terminology correctly, delivered metrics persuasively. Everything I'd built, explained by someone who didn't understand how it worked. The demonstration started smoothly. Screens behind him displayed real-time system operations, processing speeds, resource allocation, predictive analytics, everything performing beautifully because I'd designed it to perform beautifully. 15 minutes into the presentation, I opened my phone, pulled up the secure application I'd configured last week, entered my authentication credentials, the ones that bypassed company systems, the ones that connected directly to infrastructure layers Hugo didn't know existed. I watched him talk about innovative solutions and next-generation capabilities, watched Alaric beam with founder's pride, watched Tessa watch Hugo with the satisfaction of successful planning. Then I pressed execute. Nothing dramatic happened. No explosions, no sparks, no immediate chaos. The screens just started showing errors, small ones at first, processing delays, connection timeouts, authentication failures, the kind of problems that cascade. Hugo paused mid-sentence, glanced at the displays. Tried to continue. The errors multiplied. System warnings, failed operations, degrading performance metrics. Someone from the technical team rushed to the side stage, whispered urgent information. Hugo's confidence fractured. He tried explaining it was a minor glitch, temporary network issues. The screens contradicted him with expanding system failures. Alaric stood, walked calmly to the stage, took the microphone with practiced crisis management. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Let's take a brief intermission while our team resolves this. I stood, walked through the confused crowd, and approached the stage. Made eye contact with Alaric. He saw me, really saw me, for perhaps the first time in months. I pulled an envelope from my jacket, walked up the steps, handed it to him. You should read this, I said quietly. He opened it, read the single page inside. His expression shifted through confusion, comprehension, then something approaching panic. The page contained one paragraph and a list. The paragraph explained that all system authentication keys had been rotated to my personal credentials. The list detailed exactly which components would fail without my active maintenance. Not immediately, just eventually, starting tonight. This has to be a joke, Alaric said. It's actually very serious. The system is currently experiencing cascade failures across all dependent operations. Without proper authentication, backup protocols won't engage. Without backup protocols, you'll lose data integrity within hours. You can't. I already did, and I documented everything. Employment contract appendix, intellectual property exclusions, independent library licensing, all legal, all enforceable. Behind us, screens showed accelerating system degradation. Hugo stood frozen, unable to explain or fix anything. The board members were standing now, demanding answers nobody could provide. What do you want? Alaric's voice was low, controlled. Nothing. I just wanted to clarify ownership. You're welcome to the platform. I'm sure Hugo can maintain it. I walked off the stage, through the crowd, toward the exit. Tessa intercepted me near the door. What did you do? I removed ambiguity from the transition. Bennett, enjoy the evening. I think it's about to get very educational. I left the building, walked 3 blocks to where I'd parked, got in my car and drove toward downtown, where a different office waited. Different company, different future, one that understood what expertise actually cost. Behind me, emergency calls were being made, technical teams mobilized. Hugo tried explaining problems he didn't understand to investors who'd stopped listening. The system would keep failing, not catastrophically, just persistently. A slow demonstration of exactly which parts I'd built, which parts required my specific knowledge, which parts would never work quite right again without me. They'd wanted innovation over maintenance. They were about to learn the difference. The call started at 6 the next morning. Alaric first, then Hugo, then 3 board members I'd met twice. I let them all go to voicemail. By noon, my phone had logged 47 missed attempts. The desperation was almost audible in the silence between rings. I was sitting in a coffee shop across from Meridian Systems' downtown headquarters when Tessa finally reached me. She'd tried a different approach. Texted first, asking if we could talk. Civil, strategic. I called back. "Where are you?" Her voice carried the tight control of someone managing a situation. "Does it matter? The company needs you to fix this. Whatever point you're making, you've made it. Now people are asking about lawsuits, contract violations, sabotage. Sabotage implies I broke something. Everything's functioning exactly as designed. It just requires proper authentication credentials. Bennett, please, this isn't you. You're right. The version of me you knew would have accepted severance quietly, would have disappeared without complication. That person was convenient. Turns out I'm not that convenient anymore." Silence on her end. Recalculation happening in real time. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want credit for what I built. I want accurate attribution. I want Hugo to stop pretending my 7 years of work are his innovation. He never said. He stood on stage in front of investors and claimed architecture he doesn't understand. He presented my systems as his achievement, and you helped him do it. That's not fair. Fair would have been honesty. Fair would have been acknowledgement. Instead, you wrote notes about how perfect he was for your purposes and expected me not to notice." We never, she stopped, started again. "Whatever you think happened between Hugo and me, you're wrong. I don't particularly care what happened. I care that you both decided I was disposable, that Alaric thought my work was worth a 6-month severance and positive references, that all of you treated expertise like it was replaceable. So, you're going to destroy the company?" "I'm not destroying anything. The system is running. It just needs maintenance. Regular, expert maintenance, the kind that requires actual understanding, not stolen presentations. Now, what's it going to take to fix this?" I watched people move through the coffee shop. Morning commuters, remote workers, students, everyone performing their roles, maintaining their systems. "I'll send over my consulting rates, standard contract terms, market value for specialized technical services." "You want us to pay you to fix what you broke?" "I want you to pay me for expertise you claimed was obsolete. There's a difference." I ended the call, finished my coffee, checked the news feeds on my phone. Tech blogs were already covering the launch disaster. Thorn Technologies' platform failure raises questions about readiness. Investors concerned after public demo collapse. The articles were cautious, journalistic, but the implications were clear. Hugo had become a liability overnight. My phone buzzed again. Email from Alaric, marked urgent. The subject line read, "Let's talk reasonably." I opened it. 3 paragraphs of careful language about mutual interests, professional resolution, maintaining relationships. The tone was conciliatory without admitting fault. Classic negotiation positioning, acknowledge the other party's leverage without accepting their framing. The final paragraph was more interesting. "I'm prepared to discuss revised terms for your departure, or alternative arrangements if you prefer to remain with the company. Call me directly." Revised terms, alternative arrangements. Translation. They'd realized firing me wasn't viable, and they needed options. I didn't reply immediately. Let him wait. Let them all wait, while their system degraded incrementally, each error multiplying uncertainty about when the next failure would occur. By Tuesday morning, the situation had escalated. Stock price dropped 4%. 2 investors called emergency meetings. Tech media was asking pointed questions about leadership transitions and technical competence. Hugo had released a statement blaming network infrastructure, someone else's problem, not his responsibility. The statement made things worse. I received a courier delivery Tuesday afternoon at the apartment. Legal documents from Thorn Technologies' attorneys. They were threatening breach of contract, theft of proprietary systems, intentional interference with business operations. Very aggressive, very expensive legal language. I read through it carefully. Every claim referenced my employment agreement, intellectual property clauses, non-compete terms. Everything except the appendix I'd specifically negotiated 7 years ago. The one that excluded my independently developed libraries from company ownership. I called my own attorney. Spent an hour reviewing the documents, verifying my position. She was direct. "They don't have standing. Your original contract explicitly excludes these components. They can threaten all they want, but if they file, you counterclaim for unauthorized use of your intellectual property." What's that worth? 7 years of licensing fees? Conservative estimate, mid-7 figures, plus damages if you can prove they knew about the exclusions and ignored them. They definitely knew. Alaric signed the original contract. Then they're bluffing, probably trying to scare you into compliance before they have to acknowledge you have leverage. I thanked her, hung up, felt something that wasn't quite satisfaction but was close. They'd tried to intimidate me with legal threats. Standard corporate playbook. Except they'd forgotten I documented everything. Wednesday brought a different approach. Hugo showed up at the apartment. Tessa had left for her boutique hours earlier. We were maintaining the appearance of normalcy, sleeping in separate rooms, performing cohabitation for whoever was watching. I was working on my laptop when the buzzer rang. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. I wanted to see what script they'd given him. He looked worse than at the launch. Tired, stressed. The confidence had evaporated, replaced by the frantic energy of someone realizing they're in over their head. Bennett, thanks for seeing me. I hadn't agreed to see him, but I opened the door wider, let him inside. He stood in the living room, looking around like he was cataloging exits. I need to understand what you did. The team can't figure out the authentication issues. Every fix we try creates new problems. That's because you're treating symptoms, not causes. So tell me the causes. Help me fix this. Why would I do that? Because... He stopped, recalibrated. Because whatever's happening between you and Alaric, the rest of us don't deserve to be caught in it. There are people whose jobs depend on this company staying viable. You mean your job. I mean everyone's jobs. Mine, sure. But also the developers who trust that their work environment is stable, the support staff who need consistent employment. You're hurting people who had nothing to do with your situation. It was a decent argument, probably workshopped with Alaric. Appeal to collective welfare, make me the villain, reframe the situation as my responsibility. Those people worked under my leadership for years, I said. They benefited from systems I built. Now you're CTU, and those systems are failing. That's not my problem. That's yours? I never wanted to take your position, Alaric offered. The board approved. I didn't orchestrate this. But you accepted it, and you let everyone believe you built what I built. You stood on that stage and took credit for architecture you don't understand. I was following the company line. What was I supposed to do? Acknowledge reality. Say you inherited robust systems and planned to maintain them. Give credit where it was actually earned. Basic professional honesty. He sat down uninvited, put his head in his hands. I'm 28 years old. This was supposed to be my career-making opportunity. Now it's turning into a disaster, and I don't even understand what went wrong. For a moment, I almost felt sympathy. Almost. Then I remembered the handwritten note, the staged promotion, the months of watching him absorb credit for work he hadn't done. What went wrong is you tried to claim expertise you don't have. The system isn't breaking because I'm malicious. It's failing because it requires specific knowledge that you don't possess and can't fake. Then teach me. I'll pay you, hire you as a consultant, whatever it takes. Just help me understand. You had 7 years to learn. You could have asked questions, reviewed documentation, actually studied how things worked. Instead, you memorized presentations and assumed that was enough. I didn't know. Exactly. You didn't know. And nobody bothered to find out whether you knew before putting you in charge. He looked up. What do you want? Money? Public acknowledgement? A different position? Tell me what fixes this. I walked to the window. The city sprawled below. Millions of people, millions of systems, all of them depending on invisible infrastructure working correctly. I want you to tell Alaric that the platform requires my active maintenance, that the architecture isn't transferable without my cooperation, that treating expertise as disposable has consequences. He won't admit that publicly. Then the system keeps degrading. People will lose their jobs. The company might collapse. Then Alaric should have thought about that before offering me severance for building something irreplaceable. Hugo stood. You're angry. I get it. But you're not thinking about collateral damage. I'm thinking about it very clearly. Everyone who benefited from my work while ignoring my contribution gets to experience what happens when that work stops, including you. This is revenge. This is correction. There's a difference. He left without another word. I watched him go and felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction. Just the calm certainty of someone who'd finally stopped pretending other people's comfort mattered more than their own respect. Thursday morning, Alaric requested a face-to-face meeting, not at the office, neutral territory. A hotel conference room downtown, professional, discreet, the kind of place where people negotiate settlements. I arrived 15 minutes late. Let him wait. Established that his timeline wasn't my priority. He was alone when I entered. No lawyers, no board members. Just him and a leather portfolio that probably contained offers. Bennett, thank you for coming. I sat across from him, said nothing. I underestimated you, he said. That's my fault. I assumed you'd be upset, but ultimately pragmatic. I was wrong. You assumed I'd be grateful for the opportunity to have built something you could take credit for. I built the company. I took the risk. I earned the right to manage it as I see fit. You built the brand. I built the product. There's a difference you're now experiencing firsthand. He opened the portfolio, pulled out documents. I'm prepared to offer you a permanent consulting contract. Generous rates, long-term security, full technical authority over the platform. Hugo remains CTO for external purposes, but you have operational control. So I do the work while he gets the title. You get compensation and respect. He gets public responsibility. Everyone benefits. Except I'm invisible again, my expertise hidden behind someone else's image. You're practical, Bennett. You understand how organizations work. Technical competence and public leadership are different skills. We're offering you appropriate recognition for yours. I looked at the contract. The numbers were substantial. The terms were favorable. It was everything I might have wanted 3 months ago. No, I said. You haven't even reviewed the details. I don't need to. You're offering me visibility in exchange for continued invisibility. You want my expertise without acknowledging it publicly. That's not correction. That's perpetuation. What do you want then? I want Hugo removed. I want public acknowledgement of my role in building the platform. I want my position restored with accurate title and compensation, or I want nothing, and you figure out how to run systems you don't understand. That's not realistic. Then we're finished. I stood. Alaric stood too. You're making this personal when it's business. You made it personal when you handed me a gift voucher at a launch event for 7 years of architecture. When you let Hugo claim credit he didn't earn. When Tessa wrote notes about his perfection while planning my exit. All of that was personal. I'm just responding accordingly. If the company fails, you lose too. I have another offer. Better company. Actual respect. I'll be fine. His expression shifted. He hadn't known about Meridian. Hadn't considered I might have alternatives. Who? He asked. Competitors who understand what expertise costs. I walked out, left him with his unopened contract and degrading systems, left him with Hugo, who couldn't maintain what he couldn't understand, left him with exactly the situation he'd created. My phone rang before I reached my car. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Sterling, this is Maria Kovic from Tech Industry Journal. I'm writing about the Thorn Technologies situation. Do you have time for a few questions? I might. What kind of questions? Questions about platform architecture, leadership transitions, and who actually built the systems that failed, off the record initially. I smiled. The story was expanding beyond their control now. I have time, I said. Let's talk about architecture. The interview with Tech Industry Journal published Friday morning. They'd fact-checked everything, verified my employment history, confirmed my architectural contributions through public patents and code repositories. The article was careful, professional, and devastating. Sources close to the situation indicate that Bennett Sterling, former lead architect at Thorn Technologies, designed and implemented the core platform currently experiencing technical difficulties. Sterling's departure, announced as a voluntary transition, occurred days before the system failures began. By noon, 3 other publications had picked up the story. By evening, it was trending on tech forums. People who understood infrastructure were asking obvious questions about platform failures immediately after architects leave. Alaric released a statement Friday afternoon. Careful legal language about transition challenges and temporary technical issues. He mentioned me once. We thank Mr. Sterling for his contributions and wish him well in his future endeavors. Contributions. Singular acknowledgement for 7 years of work. I was packing when Tessa came home Friday evening. Not everything. Just enough to make the point clear. She stood in the bedroom doorway, watching. You're leaving. Eventually. Seemed like good time to prepare? I read the article. You talked to journalists. I answered questions about my work. Factual questions. Everything I said was verifiable. You're destroying his reputation. Hugo's, I mean. Hugo's reputation is self-destroying. I'm just declining to maintain the fiction that he built what I built. She sat on the bed. Was it really that bad? Working with him? With us? It wasn't bad. It was invisible. I built something remarkable and watched other people claim credit. I solved problems nobody else understood and got thanked with gift vouchers. I married someone who wrote notes about how perfect other men were for her purposes and expected me not to mind. I thought you'd be fine. You're talented, competent. I assumed you'd land somewhere better. You assumed I'd disappear quietly so your father's company and your new project wouldn't face complications. She stood, walked to the window. What happens now? To us, I mean. I imagine we'll discuss separation terms eventually. Asset division, property settlement, all the administrative details of dismantling a partnership that stopped being reciprocal. Just like that? 7 years of marriage and you're reducing it to administration? You reduced it first. I'm just acknowledging reality. My phone buzzed. Text from Meridian Systems. Board approved your contract. Start date flexible, equity package attached. Welcome aboard. The offer was extraordinary. Senior architect position, ownership stake, full authority over technical decisions. Is that them? Tessa asked. Your new company? Yes. You're taking your knowledge to their competitor. I'm taking my knowledge to people who value it. That they compete with Thorn Technologies is incidental. Saturday morning, I received an unexpected visitor. Patricia Chen, board member and investor, called first. Mr. Sterling, I'd like to discuss the situation. Would you be willing to meet? We met at a hotel conference room. Patricia was direct. The board is concerned, not about the technical issues specifically. We're concerned about leadership competence and decision-making process. You should be. Alaric made promises about Hugo's capabilities that aren't matching reality. We're discussing corrective measures. I can offer board seat, CTO title, Hugo demoted, public statement correcting the record, equity compensation retroactive to your hiring date. It was a serious offer. Everything I'd demanded from Alaric. No, I said. You're refusing a board seat and equity package? I'm refusing to return to a company that treated me as disposable. The title is irrelevant if the culture hasn't changed. So you'd rather destroy what you built? I'd rather build something new, somewhere I'm valued from the start, not as a crisis measure after everything breaks. Then you should know. Alaric is preparing his own response. He's planning to claim you sabotaged the system intentionally. He'll argue breach of contract, possibly criminal charges. Good luck explaining why he signed a contract that gave me ownership of essential components. She stood. Last chance. Come back, accept the board seat. We resolve this professionally. I appreciate the offer, but no. Sunday, I signed the Meridian Systems contract. Start date in 2 weeks. Full technical authority over their AI platform development. My phone rang, Alaric's number. Bennett, we need to talk. I've talked with Patricia, declined her offer. Nothing else to discuss. I'm prepared to file charges. Corporate espionage, theft of proprietary information, intentional sabotage. Access I was authorized to have, maintenance I was expected to perform, documentation I created and own. Good luck with those charges. You're destroying lives, Bennett. Not just mine. Employees, families, people who trusted this company. People who trusted you to manage it competently. That's not my responsibility. I made you, gave you opportunity, resources, credibility. I made the company work. Difference is, I can prove my contribution. Can you? I ended the call. Monday, I drove to Thorn Technologies one last time for administrative closure. HR needed signatures, IT needed equipment return. The office felt different, knowing I'd never return. Hugo's door was closed when I passed the executive floor. Through the glass, I could see him on a conference call, gesturing with frantic energy. 3 weeks of discovering that confidence wasn't equivalent to competence. The HR meeting was efficient. Exit paperwork, benefits termination, property return. Sandra slid a document across the desk. The company is pursuing action regarding intellectual property disputes and potential sabotage claims. You're advised to retain counsel. I have counsel. She's already reviewed my position. Then you know this is serious. I know it's desperate. There's a difference. I signed the termination paperwork. Returned my badges, laptop, company phone. Alaric intercepted me at the elevator. 5 minutes, my office. His office hadn't changed. Same expensive furniture, same wall of accolades celebrating vision and leadership. You're making a mistake, he said. Meridian will use you and discard you. Maybe, but they'll pay appropriately while it lasts. He poured whiskey. I built this company from nothing. I earned the right to protect what I created. You built the brand. I built the infrastructure. Those aren't the same thing. What do you want, realistically? I wanted acknowledgement. Past tense. 3 months ago, that would have been enough. Now? Now I want to build something better somewhere else and watch you explain to investors why the platform you promised doesn't work. That's vindictive. That's consequence. You treated expertise like it was abundant and cheap. Now you're discovering it was neither. Last offer. Come back. Fix the systems. We'll announce it as consulting contract. So I rescue you without commitment or acknowledgement. So you prevent collapse that hurts everyone. Everyone who benefited from my work while ignoring my contribution. Why would I prevent their consequences? I walked to the door. You still think this is negotiable, but I stopped being available for rescue the moment you handed me that voucher and applauded Hugo for my architecture. Everything since then is just you discovering what unavailable means. I left his office, took the elevator down, walked through the lobby one final time. I drove to Meridian Systems. Their CTO, Miranda Oakes, met me in the lobby. Bennett, welcome. Want to see your workspace? She walked me through the technical floor. Open layout, collaborative spaces, proper equipment, different energy than Thorn Technologies. We're eager to see what you'll build, Miranda said. Your work at Thorn was impressive. Until it wasn't. Until they forgot that innovation requires maintenance. Their loss, our gain. My workspace was corner position. Windows, proper monitors. They'd prepared respectfully. We spent 2 hours reviewing Meridian's platform. Functional, but inelegant. Solid foundations, inefficient implementations. Nothing catastrophic, just opportunities. By evening, I'd drafted preliminary architecture recommendations. Miranda reviewed my notes. This is excellent. You've identified issues our team has been debating for months. I left Meridian around 9, drove past Thorn Technologies, lights still on throughout the building, emergency work sessions, Hugo and his team trying to reverse engineer 7 years of architecture from incomplete documentation. I parked outside the apartment building, sat in the car, and thought about what came next. New company, new city probably, new everything. Building systems that would be acknowledged and valued. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Sterling? This is Channel 7 News. We're doing a segment on corporate leadership transitions in tech. Would you be willing to comment? Off the record first. What's the angle? Exploring whether tech companies prioritize image over infrastructure. Your situation exemplifies that tension. On the record then, I spent 7 years building robust infrastructure. Leadership decided that infrastructure was transferable without proper knowledge transfer. Current difficulties speak to the accuracy of that assumption. Are you concerned about legal action from Thorn Technologies? I'm confident my work was properly documented and legally protected. If they want to challenge that in court, discovery should be illuminating for everyone. I ended the call. Tomorrow that interview would air. More pressure on Alaric, more questions about Hugo, more exposure of decisions they'd preferred to keep internal. I walked into the apartment. Tessa wasn't home. The space felt temporary now. I packed another box. Methodical dismantling of partnership that had stopped being reciprocal months before I'd noticed. Tomorrow I'd meet with attorneys. Wednesday I'd conduct my final system audit, for documentation purposes. Thursday I'd begin actual work at Meridian. Everything else would unfold according to momentum I'd already established. Thorn Technologies would keep degrading. Alaric would keep threatening. Hugo would keep failing. And I would keep building, somewhere that understood what building required. Not revenge, not justice, just correction. Precise, documented, irreversible correction. I closed the final box, turned off the lights, locked the door behind me. Tomorrow was already in motion.